The Brew House was created to capture and share with you the long history of the Genesee brewery, but the brewery itself isn't half as interesting as the beer and the people who make it. Visit GeneseeBrewhouse.com. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is the original Rochester Press Box presented by the mighty Genesee Brew House. I'm Bill Pucko. Pleasure to be with you and to be joined this week by Randall, who is the general manager of the wildly successful Western New York Flash women's soccer team. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mike Catalana co-hosting with me, and Pat
Good to be back.
Normally I have the best haircut. I'm a little upset today.
Yeah, and he's also in pretty good shape. We're impressed. Look, this is women's soccer. It said wildly successful. You guys had 3 championships in 3 different leagues. The model, the business model is still challenging. How do you make this work?
Well, a lot's changed this year especially. This is the first time the Western New York Flash has had a true presence in Rochester, New York. We now have a new office. First time we've ever had an office and a front office staff here in Rochester. We're right on University Ave. If you're driving down that area in your starry nights, you'll see the big red flags flying.
It's a real plus, isn't it?
It is, yeah. You need to have that community presence. It's an interesting dynamic where you've got the Buffalo and the Rochester, but we're finally moving in the right direction where we're committing to this community, and that's important.
Where do you think women's soccer is headed?
I would say that the battle is because it has these spikes, and we know the spikes, and then it's sustaining that, right? The spikes are when, you have the World Cup or the Olympics and everybody joins in, and I always think the same thing. When you have that type of exposure, people are nationalistic. They enjoy watching those teams, but now you spread those players out on all the other teams, and it's a different experience for general fans than it is. The idea is building that fan base where people are going to be fans of your team, not just fans of the Flash because Alex Morgan or Abby happens to be on the team.
Well, that's just it. I mean, they have, I think, in my opinion, definitely better name recognition when it comes to players than the male game does. I mean, I can name half a dozen women's soccer players on the national team off the top of my head. I can't name one current male national soccer player. So, I mean, if you have young girls that are idolizing particular players when they come to town or if they're playing for the Flash, you have that going for you. I think it's better than the male game is, at least in town here.
It was a plus is when Abby left town and she played for the Flash, then when she left for another team, a lot of people thought, well, that's it for the team. They're finished. Well, it wasn't the case.
Well, I think the name recognition is huge for women's soccer, and I agree with you. I say this all the time. I bet if you walked out in the streets of Rochester, New York, most could name 2 or 3, maybe even up to 5 women's national team players. To name men's, I don't think they could do it. And that's really interesting. The other thing is demand. And right now the demand is on the women's side and it's continuing to grow. You look at all these MLS franchises, they're joining and the demand is there. Portland, they draw 15 to 16,000 every game. Orlando drew over 23, almost 24,000 for their home opener as a new expansion team this year. So the demand is there, it's growing on the women's side, and that's exciting for us as well.
Will it always be there? I mean, will that demand it goes back because Pat Summitt passed this week, and I saw a line from Christine Brennan as a thank you letter in a column to Pat Summitt, but there was also a line in there that criticized radio talk show hosts for being anti-female sports. And Pat and I, we would all had a discussion a few weeks ago about how we don't really like women's basketball and we don't like being guilted into forcing to go. Is soccer dealing with that same kind of dynamic?
Well, I think the importance of our product in any sports product, really any product as a whole, when you have entities such as celebrities, we'll call them, I mean, they've got to resonate on both sides of the fence. And what I mean by that is they've crossed over. Alex Morgan, you mentioned earlier, Alex Morgan has crossed over from being just an athlete to a big-time celebrity. And I think once they cross over this mainstream pop culture name and this icon, that changed the game. And the men haven't had as much success at the national team level either. You talk about being nationalistic, right? I know so many of my friends that aren't soccer fans that they all go and they support the U.S. team because it's that USA pride. And the women's team has made it easier to root and cheer for them and support it. And ultimately, what does that do? Well, the more you watch those games, the more there's the name recognition and ultimately the product recognition of those players.
Is it an easy sell?
I think that depends on who you ask. I mean, again, the name recognition is what helps us in our little market here, Rochester, New York. When Alex Morgan comes, the phone is ringing like crazy. You know, when Boston comes, it's a little different. They don't have all the big names.
Problem is, not enough of us knew who Alex Morgan was when she was playing here every week. This is the original Rochester Press Box presented by the Genesee Brew House. We'll be back. The Hillside Family of Agencies works with youth and families on their own terms, helping them pursue their own goals, whether at home, work, school, or one of the Hillside campuses, offering encouragement and commitment, standing with families, helping to create a healthy future. The Buffalo Bills Quote of the Week was brought to you by the Rochester Geico Office. Give the Rochester Geico team a chance to see how much you could save on all your insurance needs. Call or stop by the office on West Henrietta Road, open Monday through Saturday. The Geico Rochester Sports Quote of the Week, Rex Ryan on his dad.
He's right. And even in Philly, you look back when he became the head coach of the Eagles. I mean, he's not the best coach in franchise history. Obviously, Andy Reid was better. Dick Vermeil was better. Greasy Neal, who was the coach when they won the championship years and years ago. But he is the most beloved, I think, by a segment of the fan population. He had a certain thing about him. Rex has learned some of that off of Buddy. But he was beloved by almost everybody he was around.
Well, you want to talk about an effect that kind of coach has? Not only how beloved he was, but how hated Richie Kotite was the year after Buddy left. Like, Richie Kotite had no chance because Buddy Ryan was such a beloved human being.
And Rich Kotite actually won a playoff game the next year. Rich Kotite, I know.
And we love these crude guys, Everyone's favorite coach in their past is the guy that beat on him the hardest.
Sure.
That's the Geico Rochester Quote of the Week. This portion of the original Rochester Press Box is brought to you by the Hillside Family of Agencies. Michael, Kevin Klebja had an article in the newspaper this week talking about with Russ Brandon and the Buffalo Bills, Buffalo Sabres organization coming down really hard on our war memorial. When did it fall apart?
Yeah, I think this building has been the way it's been for a little while. It's not like it's falling apart. It needs some things in order to move up a notch. I think if you talk to Jeff Calkins down there, he would have liked more than the $10 million they're getting. They're going to do some of the things to make the building better. The Sabres are fully aware of what that building is, and that building certainly can host an NHL exhibition game. In my opinion, this is just my opinion based on some conversations I've had, I think the Sabres and the Amerks, that group, are going to work together with the city to help push the state a little bit here. They scheduled a game or talked about scheduling a game just so they could turn around and say, we're going to cancel it. In my opinion, it's a shot fired. I think it's as much towards the state in order to get more money to Rochester. Will it work? I think with Terry Pagula behind it and the way they're pushing, I think it'll eventually work. I do think the building needs upgrades. I think it needs to be a better building. But come on, you can play an NHL exhibition game there, and they do play 40 games with their top prospects there every year.
Yeah,
I think the building is fine for that.
And that's just it. Like, I think they made a terrible mistake. I get that they're bluffing and I get what they're trying to do, but you have incensed every hockey fan in Rochester this morning. I mean, have you been reading what people are tweeting and Facebooking and writing all over comments?
That was all just you.
But I'm upset about it. I mean, listen, it was such a bad bluff by Russ Brandon's part because
I said this is my opinion. I don't know if it was a bluff.
I agree with you 100%.
Okay.
I think it's a bluff. The NHL does this thing called Craft Hockeyville, where every year they take two professional NHL teams, and it's usually two of the best ones, and they put them in the tiniest rink they could find in the smallest town in America. Johnstown, PA got the game last year. You play in a barn that sits 3,000 people with a concession stand that sells Twix bars and coffee, but you can't play an exhibition game at the Blue Cross Arena in Rochester, New York. You're lying, you look bad, and you alienated a bunch of people today. And it's bad. It's a bad thing.
You can't overstate the value of a good venue, can you?
You really can't. And I was with the Lancers for 4 years. I can tell you, we played all of our games at the Blue Cross Arena here in Rochester. Jeff Calkins, he does a fantastic job. His staff does a fantastic job, and I think it's well suitable to play a hockey game. But yeah, the venue is key.
Well, let's go back to when the Red Wings were trying to get out of, Silver Stadium. I mean, I think the Red Wings went pretty heavy-handed at that time in telling everybody how bad things were on Norton Street. There were certainly issues, and I'm not comparing the War Memorial now to Silver Stadium, but it was helping to get things moving a little bit. I'm fine with them doing this. I think if it pushes them to get some more money, because Buffalo certainly knows how to get the money, and they do. And
Is it going to work?
I think it'll work to some extent, and I do believe the Amherst should be at the table, Amherst Sabres at the table discussing how the money is spent.
You know what a big Sabres and Amherst fan I am. You know I'm a diehard. I spend hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars a year on tickets and jerseys and things. This could be the last year that Brian Giannis is a Buffalo Sabre. You missed allowing him to play a game in his hometown using politics to get money for an arena. That bothers me.
This is the original Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brew House. This portion brought to you by the Hillside Family of Agencies. You're bothered, I can tell. Like It or Not is next. As we go to break, it is time for the Turnbull Heating and Air Conditioning Trivia Question of the Week. When you're searching for a local heating and air conditioning contractor, look no further than one of the most reliable teams in the area at Turnbull Heating and Air Conditioning. Is called Turnbull at 343-2005. As we come back from the break, time for the answer to the Turnbull Heating and Air Conditioning Trivia Question of the Week. When you're searching for a local heating and air conditioning contractor, look no further than one of the most reliable teams in the area at Turnbull Heating and Air Conditioning. Just call 343-2005. See New York in a whole new way. Amtrak is offering a 15% discount for all travel inside New York State and to Montreal. Visit Amtrak.com for the See New York discount. Safe, comfortable, affordable, and easy. Amtrak. Enjoy the journey. Welcome back to the original Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brew House. This portion brought to you by Amtrak Trains. Enjoy the journey. Like it or not, Arizona native is the first guy drafted in the NHL this year.
Austin Matthews, Toronto Maple Leafs. It's a good and a bad thing. It's good because, it shows that the game is growing nationwide. You got a kid from the desert, first overall pick. It's bad for hockey players in Rochester because there was a time, and one, it's because we grow great talent, but also no talent was coming from the South. Brian, Steven Giunta, Ryan Callahan, Shane Prince, Rory Fitzpatrick, Jason Bonsinger, Derek Whitmore. I could go on and on and on. We're getting these guys from Rochester in the pros because they're not coming from Florida and Texas and Arizona and California. Well, now that the game is spreading and these kids are getting better, maybe we have less guys from Rochester that are playing pro hockey.
I guess it's working because we were hating on Canada a few weeks ago. Well, you were.
I do hate
Canada only had 3 of the top 10. Finland had 3 of the top 5.
I love it. I love every second. I love that the Maple Leaf fans had to sit there in Buffalo and watch an American be the savior of the franchise. And I joke, the NHL was so polite, they let all the Canadian teams pick first.
Bro, I went to the second day of the draft, right? You should have seen all of these Maple Leafs fans justifying out loud in their own heads, well, it's okay because he's from Arizona, but he played in Europe, so he's more of a European than he is an American.
He's an American.
Shut up, Stars and Bars hockey, baby.
Rich, like it or not, 3.5-hour rain delays in baseball.
It's ridiculous.
In the
any
ninth
sport.
inning.
It's any sport. We had the same. We saw it in the Copa America Cup. Chile played Colombia. Chile was up 2-0. Colombia then started controlling the game, and they went into this crazy delay in Chicago. Baseball, soccer, it doesn't matter. It's terrible for the fan experience. It's terrible for the players. Soccer's a bit different than baseball, but even in baseball, you're cooling off. You're losing your mental focus. Your body's just...
So what are you going to do?
There needs to be a better system, and whether that's you change. I mean, in soccer, and I think baseball has this as well. If you play, maybe they don't have this in baseball, but in soccer, if you at least make it, I believe, at the 70th minute, they'd then call the game if there's a delay. But there needs to be something in place where these fans aren't sticking around for 3.5 hours.
Somebody's got to explain to me why that Yankees game couldn't have been suspended. They were playing the next day.
Well, rules are rules.
What if it gets rained out the next day?
But, okay.
So now you got a game and a half you have to make up the next time you see them.
So
But it's not like Bud Selig who made up the rules as he went along.
But I'm saying this is where these kind of rules need to change. I mean, it's just logic would say, are you going to sit there for, what if it would have been another hour or another hour or another hour? At what point do they not play the game and finish that ninth inning?
It does keep the beer tap open for an extra 3.5 hours.
I don't even know if it does.
I think they closed it.
Oh, then I'm against it then. I take back what I said.
Mike, like it or not, that the Buffalo Bills might do, and this is not Mike because it's just my thought, that the Buffalo Bills would do something to honor Buddy Ryan.
Honor him. I think a recognition. I think maybe something at opening day or the first preseason game saying something because Rex is the coach and all. But beyond that, Buddy was not a coach for the Bills. not part of the organization in that way. I think it's fine for them to recognize it for the fans and everything at a time, but nothing on the uniforms.
Not for the
nothing
Ryan
to that
boys. I thought
extent.
it would be such a nice touch.
It'd be nice, and I think because Buddy's placed in the NFL, but he wasn't a Buffalo Bill.
This portion of the original Rochester Press Box was brought to you by Amtrak Trains. Enjoy the journey. Unfinished Business is next. The Rochester Press Box Stat of the Week, brought to you by Cariglio's Pizza, with 5 locations serving the Rochester area. Visit carigliospizza.com today. Keep on track with Dunkin' Donuts fruit smoothies, made with low-fat yogurt and real fruit, blended into feel-good flavors like new wild berry. America runs on Dunkin'. Welcome back to the original Rochester Press Box. This portion brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts and the famous frozen Dunkaccino, the best drink there is. America runs on Dunkin'. Unfinished business. Go ahead.
We are now in basketball free agency time, and the big name, Kevin Durant, the Durantula. And they're trying to make it a LeBron James leaving Cleveland situation like it was, 6 years ago? And I got bad news, ESPN. It's not. Kevin Durant may be the best available basketball player in the league. Kevin Durant may be one of the best basketball players in the league, period. But he's not going to have the effect that LeBron James had leaving Cleveland and joining the Miami Heat. Kevin Durant has never done it by himself. In fact, 2/3 of his career, he did it with 2 other folks. The last couple, he did it with Bryant Westbrook. He's arguably not even the MVP of his own team. And I say this being a giant Kevin Durant fan. I just want you to know that it's all hype this summer. And whatever team Kevin Durant joins next season, whether it's the Celtics, whether it's the Warriors, whether it's the Spurs, it's going to be awesome. But they're not going to have the improvement that LeBron gave to the Heat when he left all those years ago.
Durantula, I'm guessing that's not original.
No, I'm not that funny, Bill. I only have so much funny in me.
But that's very good.
You make a good point about this because they were talking about the impact of players, Steph Curry and this guy, and they said, try to name a team in the league, any team, you put LeBron on it, they're automatically a playoff team and to some extent a contender. I don't think there's any other player in the world you can say that. As good as Durant is, by himself on a bad team doesn't necessarily make them that, and Curry doesn't either.
Yeah, and he proved that by going to Miami and coming back. Cleveland falls apart, and it all had to fit.
Yeah.
What do you got for us?
As many of our Flash players are preparing for Friday night's game against superpower Chicago, and many of our players are preparing for the Olympics, we as a front office are also preparing for a very unique game at Frontier Field. In over 10 years, soccer hasn't been played at Frontier Field, and we're bringing it back. So we're excited for the July 9th game, and we're excited to see the community come back, bring back those soccer memories and the nostalgia that Frontier Field brings.
That is still a dynamic that needs explanation as to how they, the height of soccer in Rochester was because it was played at that baseball stadium. You know, why did that happen?
I don't know what it was. It was, I talked to Chris.
You were part of all that, right?
As a fan. Back then I was a spectator. And I remember those days going to Frontier Field, and it was just a different atmosphere. It was so special. And July 9th, we'll be back there, bringing soccer back, and it's so exciting. And we're bringing Jeff DiVeronica from the Democrat and Chronicle is going to do a halftime Q&A with some of the legends that played at that stadium that made it so special then.
Very good. We'll see if they can get a word in edgewise.
That was Bill. All right. We talked about Buddy and Rex, and we talked about the love that Buddy had. And I was an Eagles fan, and I happened to be at the Super Bowl when the Bears beat the Patriots. And then the next year I was in Chicago. Buddy's first road game was against his old team, the Bears. And you could see with the guy that people loved him. And Rex talked about it a lot. Everybody loved the father. The flaw in Buddy Ryan was that he could never get the whole team together. Great defensive mind, great coach, did not have great attention to detail. That was his ultimate flaw. He was 0-3 as a playoff coach with the Eagles, and that's what eventually led to him getting fired. And I think Rex certainly has had more success in the playoffs than that. And now with the passing of his father, and obviously they were close, I'm hoping that Rex as a coach learns some other things from his father's legacy. The fact that there is more to the game than just that defense. It is great to have the players support you, and I do think Rex has that for the most part, but it is a complete game. Rex does have a good staff around him. I think he's done things in the past year to help him grow the rest of his team. But he's going to need more than just that defense, the rec style, and the players behind him to win and to win big. I hope he learns from his father's legacy, the one knock against Buddy, and I hope it's not the knock on Rex when he's finished as a coach.
What do you see Buddy having passed on to Rex? I mean, having experienced Buddy coaching in Philadelphia, you know, what about Rex reminds you of Buddy?
Players come first. He does love his players, and he gets that back. And it's a rare guy who doesn't like Rex, didn't like playing for Rex, doesn't smile when they talk about Rex. Mario Williams may be one of the few exceptions, but he's that kind of guy. Buddy had that the whole way through. If you're a Buddy guy, you're a Buddy guy. If you're a Rex guy, you're a Rex guy. But he needs the offense, and he needs the complete team to win in the playoffs.
Unfinished Business brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts. America runs on Dunkin'. Thank you for joining us, and good luck coming to Frontier Field. I think we'll all be part of that. Looking forward to it. Mike, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Duffy?
You're welcome, everybody.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week for the original Rochester Press Box.